You're back with Adam D on an attempt to understand. Thank you so much for joining me today. So, today we are speaking on the hit show Bridgerton. Um, I'm going to try it a little different this week. We're going to read through the article together that was up on the Substack earlier this week, and we'll see how we're feeling. Okay. So, like I said, this week we're talking Bridgerton, the hit Netflix show based on the hot book series. Bridgerton follows the lives of the Bridgerton family. It's set in Regency England as they bid to marry off their daughters and find suitable and proper wives for the sons. You know, we're not just here for a play by play recap of the romantic entanglements or of the heavy petting, but instead, I would like to discuss the three main elements of which I believe drive the audience of Bridgerton. Okay, so first of all, we have sex. Oh, just over a minute, so thank goodness we are. You know, First of all, of course, yeah, we have what the show is known for: hot, steamy action. Whether it's the enthusiastic push of a corset, or a very ungentlemanly like session behind a tree, or a full on evening of intimacy, the sex on the show is in your face and unforgiving. But was it necessary? Of course. Bridgerton actually does make use of the adult content within the show. The scenes serve not only to present some sexy bits and add a tad of spice, but they hold meaning for their characters. In season 1, we follow Simon, the Duke of Hastings, a man who, as a boy, was stricken with a stutter. Growing up, per his stutter, he was rejected by his father and held a deep sense of guilt around his mother as she passed away during his birth. He grows up shaming himself for taking away this blessed part of his father's life, while at the same time he harbors a growing resentment towards his father for not raising him and ignoring the letters he sent week after week. Simon returns to see his father, the current Duke at the time, of course, while he lies on his deathbed. Having been raised and trained to overcome his stutter by his late mother's best friend, Mrs. Danbury, a true G if there ever was one, he stands tall and proud before his dying father. The Duke states that he was wrong, and he could now see his son had grown into a man he could be proud of, but, right at that moment, Simon swears that he will never himself rear a son, and the Hastings title will die with him alone. This knife to his father's side is then used as the foundation of the drama of season 1. As Simon becomes the most eligible bachelor on his return to London for the dating season, he then finds himself in the presence of the most beautiful and fair Daphne Bridgerton, the eldest of the daughters and the one who will, with the pressure of setting the standard that her family will marry to, always raised to cherish family and provide the home life for her future husband. We watch the tennis match that becomes of each of their desires as Daphne and the Duke begin the typical fake courtship in order to draw the best alternative suitor for her, as well as give Simon a breath from the pressure of Mrs. Danbury to find a suitable wife to bear his children. The intimacy and then sex which revolve around this couple is quite purposeful. Daphne, although raised to have the idea of a family as the best life that one could lead, is seriously undereducated in the matters of sex, which drives the miscommunication of his oath, leading her to believe for a good amount of time that the Duke is unable physically to have children and that they must kind of bear that cross together before she later learns the true nature of things. And of course, any hardship, is created between them. So during this back and forth, the sex on screen is used really to propel the intensity of their relationship. We move from the hasty action that the Duke indulges in elsewhere to then kind of their slow and powerful connection, and of course on to the then lack of intimacy because of the new formality that their lives take on. The sex is full on, but really it would be nothing without the next ingredient to set the seals. And of course, the next ingredient I'm speaking of is romance tropes. So as mentioned, Bridgerton is based on a book series, a series I have not read, but from what I've heard, the show has made its own decisions for where to take, certain storylines, as well as the order that we follow the story in. But the main support that I can feel they got from the books was really the tropes. Romance tropes, they stand the test of time because they work. Whether it's a simple miscommunication in which one, character overhears something not intended for them, or as steamy as a forbidden romance, looking at you, Kate and Anthony. The tropes, they hold strong and the play effective. We watch the tension build between Daphne and Simon. They both have their own understandable reasons to fake pursue each other. And then once we break past that initial, will they, won't they, we get the proper drama. We get a lot of time for the chemistry to bubble before things finally explode on the honeymoon. And then we swiftly move on into that great tension between their core beliefs. And Daphne is finally educated on the matters of intercourse, and she becomes pretty pissed at Simon, for his hardcore practice of the pull-out method, until she's able to read Simon's letters that he had sent to his father as a child, and that allows her to begin to empathize with him and kind of begin their journey to resolve his childhood trauma, which will further allow them to obviously, of course, move forward to a life that they will more genuinely enjoy. Um, yeah, no lies. Simon is really pretty easy to accept Daphne's love after this. They had to start to wrap things up, and they kind of get right down to raising that family. That he always swore never to rear. Um, Finally, then that brings us on to the final point, which for me, I believe, is really the hardship. Specifically, it's the hardship of women in early 19th century London. When we first started to watch the show, my partner and I was pretty disconnected because you can see like the wealth that each family possesses. And I could just not look past like this big, beautiful display of the flowers in every home, or the focus on wearing, a brand new tailor dress one time for one ball. But you spend a large amount of time following people in financial distress. Like the Featheringtons, who are the neighbours to the Bridgertons. But the head of the household, Lord Featherington, he has like gambling debts and he has a bad eye for business. So the problems really only start with the money, because then Lady Featherington must also scramble to find suitable matches for her three daughters. And they're like two kind of ditzy girls, and then this gorgeous but very much ignored because of her plump shape and her quick mind, Penelope. And really in this, like, women in this context are treated as objects. And it's not just like the swimsuit model poster on your college dorm kind of way, but in a much more like literal and horror filled kind of way. you know yeah, Daphne in the beginning, she must dodge like the attempted pursuit of this older man who feels he has like a claim to her hand, even to the point when he like makes a move when they're out on a walk, which is really, obviously it's wrong, but by like the society rules and stuff, that's absolutely beyond the pale. That's unimaginable. And at one point in Daphne's attempt to like prevent her marriage to this guy, she essentially threatens with her family to say what happened to the authorities, and then to get that guy, to face some legal consequence. And the guy just responds like, "Nah, I'll tell the authorities." And then he just goes on to say like, who would believe some little woman? And he will say that she made a move on him, which like takes away her her innocence or her honor or something like that. And then she would be like forced to marry him out of social expectation, you know. And like all this hardship is horrible, right? Obviously, and in large part, it's kind of at the extreme end of a conversation. But I believe that watching this hardship, and watching the intelligent and capable women of these families tackle these sexist obstacles in their way, provides not only entertaining TV but inspiring material for today's age. Like I'd be a fool to say that everything is different now. A simple Google search would give an incredible amount of evidence to the contrary. But watching Daphne strive to educate herself in the world of intimacy that was so closely protected for her sake, or how Lady Featherington has to be twice as smart and 5 times as crafty as the men that surround her, yet she's given no respect. Less than no respect, she's given a box to exist in, an endless expectation. So that's a few thoughts I had on Bridgerton. Obviously, we've just recently finished the show, and I would recommend it. The nudity, there's a lot of nudity, and like I said, there's a lot of sex and stuff pretty much every episode, and it's half decent, but the real juice, like the enjoyability properly for the show, I think becomes of the flavor between the characters. Like watching the Bridgerton siblings act like siblings and just kind of mess around and tease each other, or any of the fun and game segments of season two. Like the opening and closing of season two is really good. They do like, what's that game? Billiards or something. Where you hit the ball through like the little brackets or whatever in the grass. Um, it's really just fun times with fun people. And lastly, I'll leave you with this, dear listener, and it is a wee bit of a shorter one today. But I do think that season two is probably the best. I think the first season is good intro to everything, but there is a bit much trauma for me. You spend a bit much time in Simon's past of his dad and all that stuff. Two, I think, is the perfect amount of time on other characters, like the siblings or the help staff of the Featheringtons is really great. And it has the most satisfying trope as well. It has this ongoing trope of forbidden love, between Kate and Anthony, with Kate being like the older sister who isn't available on the dating scene, and with Anthony's expectation that he should marry her younger sister, who's like the one diamond named by the Queen too. But anyway, besides the point. And yeah, the third season again, I really enjoyed. And of course, you get the most time in the third season, because the characters it focuses on are characters that are around in the previous amounts. But it was like it's hard to compare because they had that time to kind of build up the chemistry, the foundation of the relationship. I really did enjoy season three. Colin comes back looking sexy as hell as like that pirate guy. But yeah, I think season two really is just the cherry on top for myself, and I would recommend it. You'll know yourself if you're interested in this type of show or not. But I've certainly had a good time watching it through with my partner. Okay. Yeah. So look, thanks, folks. That's about it for this week. Again, a wee bit shorter, but we are going to focus on the next couple topics here on Attempt to Understand. Going to be speaking about a bucket list, speaking about favorite film of mine, and another wee thing, and then we're going to see about transition. We're going to kind of rebrand a little bit, and I think the next lot of work that will probably go out after the next couple of weeks will be like fiction work, I would say. So who knows if we'll still get to see my lovely little face, read out things. It may just be audio recordings, it may be just other stuff of the fiction work being put online and the video stuff being put to the back pedal, possibly. So we'll just have to see on that and we'll see what turns out of things. I'm certainly excited, but it will be a lot of prep work. So, look, thank you very much for listening. Always forget I meant to say podcasty things on this. So, rate the podcast or follow it if you are enjoying it. We've got a decent amount of downloads and stuff on Spotify that now, kind of split between the US and then across Europe, which is weird. But yeah, look, thank you very much for listening. If you listened to a couple episodes, I really do appreciate it. And if you're getting any lessons or any learnings, or if you're just having an entertaining time, that's absolutely fantastic. So thank you for spending some time with me because it's the most precious thing that we all have. Anyway, I'll go on and get to formatting all this lovely material. And thank you once more for listening. I hope you have a fantastic day and a great morning if it's the morning where you are. And otherwise, enjoy the rest of the time that you do have. I've been Adam Dean. You're listening to an attempt to understand. I'll catch you next week. Thank you very much. Bye bye bye.